The flat.
There are a lot of people in this room who did not know Dave played the guitar until a few years ago. The first time we ever heard him play was when Dave played on the Miller Farms hockey team. There was a hockey party back at our house one night, and Roger Hepburn decided for some reason that he needed to serenade Tom Miller to the tune of The Coward of the County. It was that night that we first heard Dave play the guitar. We never really saw him pick up a guitar before or after that most of us can remember. But in around 2007, at a Wombat hockey party at Scott and Tina Morgan's, out of the blue, Dave brought out his guitar and started to play Head Over Heels by Blue Rodeo, and he blew us all away. And everyone was like, did you know that Whip played the guitar? Every party after that, if Dave showed up, he would come in, have a beer, and then someone would say, hey Whip, did you bring your guitar? And he would go back and get his guitar out of the trunk, and we would all settle in for an evening of great music and a lot of laughs. What I wouldn't give to be able to rewind and go back to one of those jam sessions. I firmly believe that music held a deeper meaning for Dave than for most people. When my dad was sick, Dave wanted to go to the house and play his guitar for him. He wanted to do something to help, and that was the best way he knew how. I believe that a lot of the bonfires we all sat around at our house with Dave playing was his way of trying to help us get through a difficult time in our lives a few years ago. He rescued us with his music, his friendship, and his love for all of us. I can't imagine how we would have gotten through those days without him. So I thought it was especially fitting that the picture selected for Dave's obituary is the one of him playing for Carol's mom when she was in the hospital. Because he shared his gift of music, he made our world a better place. I had the immense pleasure of getting to sit beside Dave on many occasions and play my guitar with him. The first time I ever played, I was very nervous, playing in front of people. But Dave took me under his wing and allowed me to just pick away beside him while he had the real job of remembering all the lyrics. At first, he would share a small repertoire of songs. But as his popularity and comfort level grew, so did his playlist. But you know, one of the things I love most about Dave is that when he was playing, he always seemed to manage to include everyone. And he made everyone feel like a musician. There are a lot of really great pictures circulating around right now, and a lot of these pictures of Dave playing his guitar, and there are usually other people playing and singing along with him. We were the traveling Whipberries. And he would always talk to you like a fellow musician. He would begin most songs by telling you what key we would be playing in, and it didn't matter if you were playing a guitar or a hockey stick or a set of spoons. He would say, we're going to start this one in the key of G. And Squirrel and Don would tune up their hockey sticks, and Johnny would tune up the spoons to the key of G. A few weeks ago, Carol arranged a little jam session in Dave's hospital room, and Amy Hillier and I had the privilege of being asked to play for Dave. It was a bittersweet afternoon, but while we were playing, I was struck by what a great musician Amy is becoming, and how much it reminded me of playing with Dave. A few years ago, she was much shyer. That afternoon, she played with a familiar confidence that I recognize as being very much like Dave's. I'm sure he was very proud of her that afternoon. I know I was. I know that he has had a big influence on her playing, and I think that will be part of Dave's legacy for many people. I think for most of us in the room, music has become more important to us because of Dave.
Dave's best songs were ones that had great lyrics, unforgettable melodies, and they all seemed to tell a story, which is not surprising, because we all know that Dave loved to tell stories. There are a lot of things that make him a very unique and special person, and the fact that he's a true storyteller is just one of them. I know right now most of you, if not all of you, are smiling because Dave has told you a story or two. Do you know how many people have told us over the past few days about 5-minute phone calls that turned into an hour when they were talking to Dave? Roger Hepburn shared that whenever he saw Dave's red 52 Mercury pull in the driveway, he knew they were going to have a game of catch, a long talk, and a cold pint. Nobody can tell a story quite like Dave. As Carol said, he would take his time.
And have you ever noticed how people try to talk just like Dave when they're telling a story about him? I first noticed when Carol came to visit us and Dave received his diagnosis. She was talking about him wanting bran muffins and prune juice, and she broke out her best Dave McCauley impression and said, well, you know, Carol, I do like my bran muffins and prune juice. Everybody does it. Donna Hepburn pointed out the other day that Dave was a great one for stopping in for visits. We have great memories of Dave pulling in the driveway to catch a couple of periods of the hockey game and have a visit. He would come in and it was the same every time. he would pull a beer out of his back pocket. And Don would say, Whip, I don't know where you buy your jeans, but I gotta get a pair. Because his back pockets would fit 2 beers just perfectly. His favorite topics of conversation were always Sean, Jamie, Todd, and Carol. He was very proud of all of them and would give us updates on their schooling, jobs, and I remember especially how proud he was of Carol when she completed a human resources course at Georgian College. A friend of Dave's told Don the other day about a time when he had just gone through a really tough breakup. He said, I moved away and didn't think anyone from around Wyerton really knew where I was. One day there was a knock at the door, and who was standing there? Dave McCauley. And I knew exactly why he's there. He was checking up on me. That was Dave.
A couple of personal stories that I recall are as follows. A group of Miller Farm guys were out after a night in the Diamond and some sociables. Dud and Sudsy decided to go for a nightcap at Cooley's. Always a conscientious guy, Cooley had gone home at a sensible hour, so he'd be in good shape for work. Well, they banged on the door, and as you can imagine with these 2 dainty fellows, it was quite noisy. All of a sudden, the door swung open, and Cooley bellowed, You woke up the little guy, and now you woke up the big guy. Now get the home. Gus and myself and a couple of others were in the car and were actually scared. We had never witnessed that side of Whip before, the calm guy before. The next day was the golf tournament. Everyone came in a little awkward, heads down, not knowing what to do, not knowing how Dave would react. In his normal style, he apologized. Ever the gentle giant. Another time was a similar late night gathering. This time I think Cooley had invited everyone to his place to review the game. As always, with totally characteristic discipline, Whip decided it was time for bed and off he went. Some of the fellas, I think this time it was Sudsy and Ruthie, decided a little prank on the big fella was in order. So they started the lawnmower, propped it up by the garage door, and took off. The big fella was not impressed. Within a day or two, he was totally over it, and often over the years after would recall the story with his special chuckle. Scott and Jessica Bridge shared a story of how they were at the HIP concert at the airport with Carol, and they enjoyed a night out. Dave had not gone, so of course they called him to be the DD, and he dutifully came and took them home. Scott and Jessica lived on Dawson Street in those days, and Scotty had a bit of a hunger on, so he convinced Cooley to stay for a burger. He fired up the barbecue, and well, as you've probably guessed, got back into another beverage and forgot all about the burgers. By the time they noticed, it looked like the back of the house was on fire, and the burgers were like briquettes. Cooley quietly scooped up a few and took them home, and then shared them with Gus and a few others while regaling how great a chef Scotty was. I had the pleasure of playing hockey on Miller Farms hockey fastball for Miller Farms, and then the Thomas Norris busing with Dave. I will always recall how focused he was. It was in an unassuming way. He was never very vocal, and most would assume from the bleachers that he was just a guy who enjoyed the game and didn't get too excited. The reality is he was a student of the game. He held himself to a very high standard and was very serious. When he was on the mound or the blue line, it was all business. He was a great teammate, and it truly was an honor to play with him. Dave was a quiet but strong man who had strong beliefs and convictions. He knew what he liked and what he didn't like. He never really liked attention or being the focus, even when he was a pitcher. He always gave credit to his teammates, and I don't recall him ever giving anyone any grief, even those of us who made the occasional error with a no-hitter on the line. He was a loyal teammate, friend, brother, uncle, cousin, co-worker, husband, and father. He was a role model for his sons, Sean, Jamie, and Todd, and always had the greatest pride for his boys. He was rock solid, the guy who was always there. If he said he would be there, he was. If he said he would do something, it was done. And it was done with great detail and with great pride. You could always count on him. He was that steady, strong giant who you wanted on your side. In our later years, I noticed that while I, for the most part, always thought he was a kind of shy, quiet guy, he actually had a great sense of humor. And in many cases, in his own quiet way, would get things going. He'd encourage Ruthie and the boys to razz each other in the dressing room. And we'd get Todd Hay wound up on the ball diamond and chirping the other team. And he had that chuckle, that quiet but rub your belly, Cooley chuckle that made me giggle just hearing him. As has been heard in many of the words today, Dave lived for his boys. He worshipped his boys and was most proud when watching them excel. He taught them the skills of sport, and they might even admit he was a bit of a tyrant. For example, making them go on the ice a half hour before practice, as Susie mentioned, or throw the ball for hours on end. But now I know they treasure those times. More than the actual game, however, he taught them what it meant to be part of a team. what it meant to be reliable and responsible, how you had to accept the rules of the game and the consequences if you broke them, how it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, what is important is how many times you get up, how sports is a great teacher and how you could be serious and yet have fun at the same time, and kind of keeping with our Miller Farms and Busman mottos, win or lose, hit the booze. I think you've got that one okay, boys. Dave was a rock-solid, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy that anyone would be glad to call their friend, and I was truly humbled to be considered one. I always admired him and cannot recall a single person ever having a bad thing to say about him. Even during his battle in the greatest game of his life, he remained in good humor with a positive outlook and a practical, solid, and even-mannered approach. Well, other than the odd expletive that he shared with Gussie before he would fall back into the fun and laughs mode. This is not surprising, but so Dave. I visited him in the hospital in Toronto, I believe just before his surgery. He had his hair cut in a bit of a double mohawk. It was sides, wings on either side. Carol, Sean, and Melissa were there. Very quickly, Cooley made the conversation about me, and then on to Sean and a story. Well, Bill, I was just saying to Sean, and he told a story about our ball days. A story that, as was the case always, and with a chuckle from Dave, that caused everyone to feel good. It was so Dave. Here he was dealing with brain surgery, and yet he always focused on others and did not want the attention focused on him. After Dave received his diagnosis, Carol told us that he had two goals he wanted to accomplish. One was to play at Dustin and Kale's wedding. The other was to have Christmas with his family. Dave was quiet, but strong and very determined. This was never so evident as when, with virtually all of his strength drained, and he was in the ninth inning of the toughest game of his life, he mustered the strength to perform and play his guitar at Kayla and Dustin's wedding. For those of you who were there, you will recall how special this was. For those who weren't, I can tell you it was a magical time. Everyone in the house stood, sat, or danced in awe as Dave played songs that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up, that sent shivers down your spine, and there was not a person in the arena who did not have a tear in their eye. When he sang Love Me Tonight, a special song that he requested the very talented Dave Nixon to learn, and one that will always hold special meaning for Kayla and Dustin, and anyone who had the privilege to share in that special evening. As always, you were a class act that night, Cooley. Carol, here is a bottle of wine from the wedding for you. It is rare in life when you get a perfect moment. Hopefully, whenever you look at this, it will cause you to smile and remind you of that special day.
On Christmas Day, we stopped in for a quick visit with Dave, and what struck me was that what an amazing family the Macaulays are. Sean, Jamie, and Todd are three of the finest young men I know. It is definitely a testament to the kind of parents that Dave and Carol are when the boys were growing up. You're an amazing family, and you've given us all so much. If any of you have ever gone to Beatty Lake on Family Day, or if Carol has ever organized a four-wheeler ride for you, you will know exactly what I mean. Carol, your strength during Dave's illness is something that we are all in awe of. I don't know how you did it, but you managed to always stay one step ahead of all the chaos and cleared away all the hurdles that kept coming your way. You took such good care of Dave, and I'm sure that played a very big part in him being able to reach his goals.
On January 2nd, it felt like the music stopped, that the song was over. But I don't believe that. I think if you listen very carefully with your heart, you can still hear him playing. You can still hear him singing, and you can definitely still hear him laughing. Dave, you are an unforgettable melody. And we have the lyrics of your song written in our hearts. Until we meet again, rest in peace.
Thank you, Bill and Susie. Anybody who didn't know Dave knows him now. I would ask those who are able to please stand and join with me in saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation,